Your
Cord.
mic.
What's that? Can you still hear
Did
me?
you hear me?
You cut out for a second.
I was just asking how your week had been. You had meetings, right?
Yeah, well, I had first of all, I love your haircut.
Oh, thank you.
It looks so cute.
I decided that it's getting close. I'm trying to fool myself into thinking that my hair is growing faster.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of like who was it, like Blondie or somebody like that would always dye the tip of her hair back in the
I remember, and whoever the chick was from the band Berlin.
Berlin, right? Not Blondie. Berlin.
Oh, cool. I think Blondie did something similar around the same time, but it was black and blonde.
Yeah. Oh
Yeah,
my gosh,
that Emily told me that it looked cool. She said that it's an ombre, so I guess I'm.
Yeah, I have to just look up the singer from Berlin.
I can't remember her name.
Terry Nunn.
There we go.
Yep. It looks like she still has that look going on all these years
Seriously?
later.
I don't normally cut my hair this short, but I don't know. It's a trip growing it out. I don't know. I haven't been carded in a long time, though. I will tell you that. Not since, wearing the mask with white hair, the white hair is, nobody's going to ask you.
Mm-hmm.
This morning I went to Trader Joe's, and our Trader Joe's in Woodstock now does a seniors hour between 8 and 9.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I should be flattered or upset that I did not get turned away. There it is. It's like 8:10, and I'm like, I'm there with a mission, right? Like, must have maple syrup for the waffles, and they didn't stop. And then I look around me, and it's like the silver-haired crowd and me.
Sometimes I wonder, they have the same thing at our local Albertsons, and obviously I'm never up that early if I don't have to be. But I don't know that they stop people because I wonder, are they embarrassed to ask someone how old they are?
Well, I chuckled because as I was leaving at about 8:30, they did turn somebody away.
Oh.
A young man.
Right. Somebody who was obviously like under 30, probably.
Or something, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Great.
Huh.
I think it reminded me actually of our dear friend Kate, who laments that in the English language there isn't a term for women of a certain age. I gather in Indonesia it's ibu.
Ibu
or something like that.
Yeah,
Right.
Ibu is kind of like Mrs., but it also means mother, and
Right.
yeah. But there's terms for people at different ages. So anak,
Right.
and then when you're like mba is kind of you're in adolescence at some point you turn into an Ibu, and then there's also an auntie, which is often used for elderly women. So, yes. So I was mba, Ibu, and then when I started getting called Tanta, I was like, no Tantas here. No, not allowed. But she liked that, did she?
Yeah, she liked that because it's such a weird age, where you're going through perimenopause or menopause. You're kind of at war with your body and your sense of self, right? And the idea that you finally actually achieved an honorific, right? Like you're finally
wow.
seems like a good.
Okay.
It's always stuck with me when I heard her talk about it.
Yeah. Well, I think the sweet thing about it too is that nobody would ever call you by your first name. An Indonesian would never say, hey, Kate. They would say, hey, Ibu Kate. It'd always have the Ibu.
Yeah.
So it is very sweet.
Yeah, and it's I think preferable to ma'am. It's like when I started getting ma'am, it's like, oh my God, get me out of here.
I got ma'amed the other day, and I just turned and I looked at them and I said, you just called me ma'am. And they were just like, whatever, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah.
I kind of miss that whole Southern thing that my kids didn't grow up with it because they all grew up here, but my brother's kids grew up and with this Southern style of everybody is referred to as Miss or Mr. So obviously not me because I'm an aunt, but like their teachers would be, Miss Susan or something like that.
Right.
Or Gosh, I guess, what is his name? Mr. Eric. That's one of my brother's West Point friends who is the godfather of Avery, Emily's twin, I suppose.
And it
yeah,
would
I
always
mean, I
be
think
with their
that's,
first name, not their second, and not their family
yeah.
name.
Yeah, unless it's somebody, I mean, that's a familiar thing. And if
Mhm.
it's not a familiar thing, then it's sir, ma'am, Mr., or Mrs.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
it's just
Mhm.
interesting culturally.
Mhm.
Yeah, I don't care. I was like, you guys can call me whatever you want. I don't even care if you call me Aunt Dana, just whatever. I think I jumped in and relished the role of crazy pot smoking aunt as soon as I was allowed to.
Seems like a
I
really
wonder
good
what
role
the
to embrace.
genderqueer term is for Miss and Mr.
Oh God, I'm sure they don't have anything like that in the South.
No,
They must. They
it's a binary
must.
world. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe within certain groups, but I'm thinking in the wider Southern culture, that's just something that is left in the closet.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's
Mm-hmm.
weird.
Yeah.
I left there with jetpack on. I was like, let's get the fuck out of here. No.
Oh.
Yeah, it's weird when I go to Germany, I'm Frau Doktor, right? Like they don't just call you Mrs., but then they add your academic title too.
Mhm.
Oh, you're Mrs. Doctor?
Mrs. Dr. Schultz, yeah.
Holy, that's cool as shit.
Yeah.
I like how they shove all of that stuff in there together.
Yeah, yeah, and if you're a professor, then you'll be like, Frau Professor Schultz. So they, like Mrs. Professor Schultz. It's just like, yeah, that's wild.
That's got to be good for the ego.
Yeah, it can be entertaining.
But is it only in those environments where you're working professionally, or would like people who knew you socially and knew you had that title would also use that?
they would use it, and they would actually introduce you in like in a social setting. If you went to a dinner party and met some people you hadn't previously met, they would introduce you by title, and it takes forever to offer somebody the informal you.
Wow.
Yeah, there's a presumption that you stay in the formal until the older person or of higher rank makes the offer.
Mm-hmm.
That's
having a
kind of
doctorate,
cool.
yeah, it's kind of
So
like.
how quickly do you do that, Astrid?
Very quickly. I'm like, call me Astrid. Stop with this Frau Doctor nonsense. But I forget that people wait for me to do it. I'm like,
Right,
oh.
right. It's not baked into you anymore. Yeah.
How often do you get to go back to Germany?
Once a pandemic, I don't know.
Yeah, right.
I usually go once or twice a year, for typically, and associated with other travel that takes me to Europe. I'd like to swing through Germany, and there's usually some family event or just hang out with my mom for a bit.
Mm-hmm.
I'd love to be able to coordinate. I really want to go back to Germany again, go back to Berlin. It would be really fun to be there when you were there. We'd have a good time.
Oh my God, Berlin is amazing. I was blown away last time I went. Yes, let's do that. Group trip.
Yeah. I mean, I just feel like I need to soak up so much more of Berlin. I don't know if I told you this or not, Astrid, but when I was born there, and then because I was traveling with my parents all the time, I never had the opportunity to go back until Peter and I went together like 11 years ago, 12 years ago. And I remember getting off the train and just being like, yes, I'm back. It was really.
It felt that good, huh?
It felt really good. I felt like all of a sudden I had recovered this part of my identity that I left behind when I was like 2. Because whenever we lived even in some military settings, but in non-military settings, if people would always say, where are you from? And I was like, well, kind of everywhere. And then the next question is, well, where were you born? And I'm like, Berlin. And they're like, are you German? I'm like, oh, fuck you. How stupid. I mean, seriously, I'm like American from a military family. I just told you that. So I was I always felt like I was in this limbo with a certain part of my identity. And to be able to go back and see the hospital where I was born and the base where all of this shit, the apartment buildings that we lived in. It was just really fun. I felt really good when I came home. I felt like, yeah. And I could not wait to get back again. just because
Yeah.
it's culturally so amazing.
So cosmopolitan and so amazing. Yeah, it's funny. I feel, yeah, it's like, it's probably the one city I would go and live in Germany. I have no desire to go back and be there for any amount of time. But if I were to live somewhere, it would be Berlin.
Mm.
Yeah, that's cool.
Amazing. It's got all that history now, of course, and all the it was weird. I'd gone back since the wall came down for a friend's wedding, and it was interesting. It was like back in, it was the late 90s, like 98, 99-ish. And her dad was the head of the Chamber of Commerce in Berlin, and they showed us as part of the wedding party festivities. We went to his place of work, and they had this huge scale model that must have been like 4 foot by 4 foot or 5 foot by 5 foot, all tiny little houses in the Brandenburg Gate, and it was basically the master plan for how Berlin was going to be renovated, with the wall having disappeared and so on. And he said, oh, and we'll be done, sometime early in the next, he was like 2015, and it just seemed so far off. And then I went back 2 years ago with my business partner on a business trip, and I was blown away because that vision is now reality, right?
Yeah.
Like you can walk around the Brandenburg Gate. They have restored the square. They've restored the big boulevards, right? And like it looked in the late 1800s, and it's just wild.
Oh, wow.
To see that sort of urban master plan come to fruition in the context of that city in particular.
Yeah, I think I was there in 2008, maybe. Something like that. I'd have to go back and look and see. Everything all kind of runs together now anyway. It's like a big jumble of time.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I remember being pretty amazed just by everything that I saw. I'd like to go back, like you said. I mean, it's changed a lot then if they've finished their, the master plan of redevelopment. I thought it was really cool. I mean, comparing it to the photographs that I had seen, because my dad was, thank goodness, he was really into photography at that point in his life. And so we have tons and tons of black and white photographs of what the Brandenburg Gate looked like when it had barbed wire all the way around it. And, for any of, I guess the wall was just starting to go up in places in 1962. So it wasn't complete.
Yeah, 61, yeah.
Yeah, it's just really neat. I was really glad that he did that. Just for me.
Yeah, no, that's wild. Yeah, it's wild to go back now and have to look for it, right? Because you can barely see it where it used to run. And it used to have this, because back in the early 90s, right after reunification, I had a boyfriend who was based in Berlin for his social service in Poland. And so we were in and out of Berlin all the time. And it was wild, right? Because the wall was coming down pretty quickly, and that death strip, right? It was like a city block wide of just no man's land.
Mm-hmm.
And all of that is now completely built in, right? You can't see it anymore like you used to be able to in the.
Are the lines of it commemorated in any way, Astrid? Or
yeah, there is I think it's a metal line that runs through it, and you have to look really. The one thing they have done that I actually find oddly charming is they kept all the East German traffic lights, and the little man wears a hat, and that's how you know you're in the former Russian sector. By the little hat on the traffic light.
On the traffic light. Oh, yeah. Neat.
The little guy.
Neat. And there must be parts of the wall that were kept, right, or put in.
Yeah, but there are few and far between. Yeah,
there's one here in DC.
Well, that's the thing. It got chopped to bits and sold all over the place. And,
yeah, I can't remember which museum.
And then they moved Checkpoint Charlie. So the museum at Checkpoint Charlie still exists, but the actual checkpoint is,
it's not there anymore.
Yeah.
Oh wow! I'm glad I got a lot of photographs when I was there.
There's like a faux little booth where it used to be, and they have actors standing there, sort of looking all
weird.
You can take your photo with them, but it's not the real deal.
Right.
Funny.
Yeah.
That's a great museum. Yeah. It really is. It's very interesting.
Yeah. Now I want to go to Berlin.
Cry.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's. Yeah.
Although look what a beautiful day it is for you guys there in Portland. Those blue skies.
Right.
Wow.
Finally.
Yeah.
Does it feel like all of that is like far in the past, or does it still feel like?
No, I still think, I mean, it pops up in the news all the time, and I decided to start following a couple of different groups on the dreaded Facebook that, like one of the groups is called Oregon Fires 2020, and they just, it's connections.
They're posting photos of what was destroyed. Yeah.
With firefighters, with you know, people that are allowed back in, and so you get a really good view. Not, I guess, not a good idea. I mean, it's pretty devastating. And then PGE has a group that's about their environmental work that they do with dams and fish hatcheries, and so I decided to start following them, because whenever we camp and I get a chance to meet any of the fish biologists that tromp through your campsite, it's just so interesting to talk to them. So, and they've been posting a lot of photographs of
like damage done to streams and
damage done to structures, whether the fish counters survived. And so it's kind of helpful to be able to try to piece together a picture of the pockets that may have escaped being burnt.
Yeah, unfortunately, Opal Creek didn't make it.
Yeah, I saw some of those photos.
Yeah, they just sent around a note. It's this beautiful piece of virgin rainforest that was protected, Laurel, by invoking the mining claims and the mineral rights. And there's actually a famous logger turned environmentalist, George Atiyeh, who helped push that through in the 70s. And he unfortunately died. He was found dead at his homestead in that part of the woods. And it looks like most of it is gone. Like maybe one cabin is left standing. This is great facility where you could rent cabins, and they run environmental education programs. The staff
that's devastating. That's devastating.
So much of it is just, I think we brace for the stories of all the dead and all the lost structures, right? And camps and, wilderness.
Yeah, I didn't mean to pretend like it was over. I was thinking more of like life in your neighborhood and the smoke and things that you guys had been suffering from.
Nice now, although our neighbor was just saying this morning, the winds are they're supposed to turn again, and we may get a second load of smoke next week.
Yeah.
I heard that. That's not.
Shoot.
It's weird.
Because stuff is still smoldering.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably nasty. Yeah, it's odd how things kind of have shifted and you still feel it. It's going to take such a long time, I think, for them to be able to really assess exactly what's happened. I get really anxious. I don't know about you, Astrid, but it with all of the smoke made me just super elementally anxious.
Yeah, I think that it was existential dread, right? Like it's like a whole different felt apocalyptic, right?
Yeah.
The dread level is still pretty high in general, judging by my tequila consumption.
When you think about it.
Pointed out, it's like, well, what you gonna do?
Right before the election. Yeah, you're right. The dread level is still super high.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the dread level in the whole country, just like every day escalates about every single freaking thing. But yeah.
Well, I still have hope. I'm hoping that it's not going to be crushed.
Well, the New York Times just moments ago released a story that they have obtained tax return data for Trump extending over more than 2 decades. With now.
Wonder how long it's going to take him to pour through that and figure out what's the what.
Yeah, I mean, the highlights are he's paid $750 in federal income taxes in 2016, nothing in the 10 of the previous 15 years. Largely because he reported losing much more money than he made. So they're going like, it's chronic.
I think we kind of knew that already, more or less, right?
Yeah,
you
but now the
have the documentation.
Out, right? Yeah. So now the details are going to come out. I think that's the best sort of October surprise we could hope for.
Yeah.
That's very true.
Yeah.
God, I just hope that he has evaded taxes for stuff. Please, something. Anything.
Maybe we can get another impeachment battle on top of the Supreme Court battle.
Right.
That would be interesting.
Right.
What a pig.
My mom told me that she once or twice a day goes and looks at that clip that you showed me, Astrid, of Trump getting booed in front of RBG's casket.
It was funny
He's
to
like, I
watch
just keep the
how-
tab open and watch it every once in a while.
So glad to be
So
a source
sweet.
of some comfort.
Yeah. Watching his face, like watching his body language, the way that he kind of kept like shifting a little bit. I was trying to figure out what was going on in his head at that time. Like, is he just trying to shut it out and pretend like, it's just a bunch of rabid women, feminist people, or what was he
Who
thinking?
knows what that man's thinking? Whatever it is, it's disgusting. Yeah. Okay, well let's go back over to
On that
loving
note.
kindness.
Loving kindness.